Welcome to Filmpreneur, episode 2. Filmpreneur is the podcast and the course that is inspiring and empowering filmmakers to create massive positive social change in the world through creating and building profitable and sustainable business. So this is episode 2. And episode 2 is a tough one for me, but it's a good one for me because a lot of the hard lessons that I learned in this part of my story are truly what built my motivation to create a workspace and a film set that is based on respect and based on kindness. You'll understand why as I walk through these stories a little bit as we move on. Now, when I think about failure, it's interesting. I'm one of those type of people that sees failures as learning moments. But sometimes it's really tough to always think that way, because a fail is a fail, and it just feels better to win, doesn't it? So after 3 years of building my skill set at film school and really getting excited to see a lifetime career as a filmmaker, as a director of photography, for me it was cinematography that was grabbing me at the very beginning. I loved editing, I loved directing and producing, but really it was capturing the images. So I was really excited, suffice it to say, to be able to be launched out into the feature film world immediately after school. And by the end of this episode, I'm going to talk about the very first film that I worked on. But before I do that, I'll tell you about a few of the other films, because every one of them were really unique and really special, in fact, in how I was able to learn through experience. Okay, so I get a lot of young people asking me, people that I mentor, asking what they should do to go to film school, and because they want to have a career in film. And I think film school is a great way to go for some people, and for others, it's completely not necessary. What I do like about film school is it really teaches you how to learn, okay? And that's like for any post-secondary. If you go to university, if you go to college, any sort of post-secondary education, I think is good because you're learning how to learn. Now, is it the best way to learn your craft? That's debatable. For film, as an example, I think if I immediately joined the union and went through the unionized, film training system that they have, I probably would have accelerated my career a lot quicker in the camera department than going to film school. That's just a little bit of what I've experienced, which means if you have an opportunity to get out and just start working and learning through mentorship and learning through apprenticeship, that is really the best way to go in my mind. Now, I never want to discount school. I went through it. I gained a lot. I really did. But every one of the feature films that I was able to work on, and series as well, I learned special little bits and pieces that really helped me develop the company that with my team right now with Hemmings House. A few of the first films I worked on were really cool CBC feature-length docs for television. And for these, it was fun because some people know this, but I am legit trailer trash. This guy here, yes. When a lot of people, other people were spending money on, travel, going out to the bars, whatever, I was spending money on motorhomes. Yes. It started with Volkswagen vans in high school, and I kept on, fixing them and upgrading them. And towards the end, at film school, I was living in my motorhome. And there's hilarious stories about that motorhome that I'll have to tell you some other time. Nobody loves failure. It's just one of those things. It doesn't feel good to fail, does it? Like, we want to be winners in life and winners in things that we do. We want to be productive and feel like we're adding something of value to everything that we touch. And sometimes when we fail, it feels like perhaps we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough, or we're just not maybe fulfilling the purpose that we thought was our purpose. These sort of things are the thoughts that go through your head when you fail. Now, failure can also be a really important tool, and that's where I have always tried to stay strong with that philosophy is when you fail, there's amazing lessons that can be learned out of it. And trust me, I have a lifetime of fails that have helped me grow this business into what it is today. And we're going to go through a lot of these fails over the next few episodes of Filmpreneur, but I think it's really important for us to go into the world of entrepreneurship recognizing that if you don't fail, you're not doing it right. So essentially, you're failing if you're not failing. Does that make sense? It kind of doesn't, but stick with me on this. So for me, looking back on those early days of working on film sets, by the way, constantly feeling like a failure on those film sets because I was new. And, this is all new to me. And there's so many different learning opportunities because I continued to try. And the true definition of failure is when you fall down, but you decide not to get back up. So as long as you keep on getting back up, that's the important thing. So where did my early fail come? Or at least my sense of fail was after investing 3 years of my life into film school, because remember, I went to film school kind of because I was bored. I didn't go to film school because I loved film. I went to film school because it sounded like an adventure. I ended up finding my passion at film school and realizing, holy jumpins, man, I like this. This is for me. Archiving cool stories, sharing great stories. I love this. I've always done this all my life. So I really did find my passion when I went to school. But when I entered the industry and worked in it for about 4 years, I ended up quitting. And quitting feels like fail. When you quit something that you've worked so hard to get to, sometimes it just feels like, what was the point? Did I waste all that time? Now, I'm going to get to why I quit and when I quit in a few minutes. But at the beginning, I just want to acknowledge as well that I learned so much and had so many great experiences working in the Hollywood feature film scene, met incredible people, lifelong friends, in fact. Working on a feature film is kind of like going to the front lines of war. Of course, on a much smaller scale, but you're putting 16-hour days in. So much is at stake as far as how much money is going to these things that there's very minimal margin of error. You cannot screw up. Like that pressure is constantly there. And it just feels like after you're done a feature or a series, you come out worn out, a little bit of post-traumatic stress. It's a big experience, and it can get to you unless you've got a thick skin. For me, as a creative person, I felt that over about 4 years of working on films as a camera assistant, I felt that my creative soul was not being honored. And it wasn't the fault of the industry. It's just the role it was. I was lugging gear, handing lenses over, taking film out of mags, and also a lot of times not being treated well. As I said, as a learner, you can be in environments where you've got mentors and coaches who are helping you learn, or you can have a different approach, which is more the approach of shame-based learning. When you screw up, you get yelled at, you get bullied, you get tricked, you get made fun of. All these things that strip away someone's creativity happen a lot for me on film sets. Now, it wasn't just me. I'm not playing a victim role here at all. This is the culture of the film sets that I worked on. And as we're finding out now, I'm recording this episode right now in January of 2018. We're seeing Hollywood and entertainment industry unravel now because of things like bullying and things of people not respect and a whole bunch of power manipulations. Well, I went through it. I understand where that unraveling has to come from, and in fact, I'm really happy that it's happening right now, because after working on features for a certain amount of time, I ended up having it. And I'm going to tell you a funny story about where this whole thing started. The whole thing started on our first feature film that we worked on. It was called In Her Defense, and it was a film that was directed by a very special man, a guy named Sidney Fury. And he's special to me because he was a very kind, gentle, great leader, and he was an amazing director. And he's one of those directors that you've seen his movies. If you're brought up in the 80s, like Iron Eagle and a few of the Superman series, Sidney is just one of those Canadian legends in the directing world. Anyhow, I was still in film school with my friend Andrew Tidby, and the both of us had the opportunity to volunteer for free on our very first feature. So we actually went to the production manager and said, we really want to work on this just to get some experience. And the production manager said, well, we don't have a budget for you, but feel free to come and learn on the set. And I'm like, yep, all over it. So we talked to the folks at film school, and they gave us some time off so that we could actually get some real life experience, which is really cool of them to do. And that particular feature film was insane. I think we had something like 11 days to film a complete feature. And most features take, many, many, many weeks. But this was like an 11-day insane run. So much so that we didn't do multiple takes. Instead, we had something like 6, 7 cameras running film at the same time, so we could get all the different angles in one take, which is just crazy. But think about what that means for the camera assistant, which was me, a volunteer camera assistant. If we had 6 or 7 cameras, that means we had just as many lens kits, this as many mag reels, this as many different high pressure moments to get film out of the mags into the darkroom, into bags, and shipped off onto the airplane to the developers. High stress, high pressure. On that particular film, my immediate report, which was the second camera assistant and the first camera assistant, at the end of the day, they were straight up bullies. They were not kind to us at all. And there was times where they would set us up to fail, legit, just to get some laughs. And I'm just not used to that. You know, I grew up very fortunate never to experience bullying as a kid. And for me to experience bullying for the first time as an adult, it was weird. It was very, very foreign to me. But remember, this is not a point of failure for me at this point. This is just like kind of a realization like, wow, the film industry isn't as creative and loving and awesome as I thought it was going to be after going through film school. These are things that you can learn only by doing, by the way. Nobody can teach you that. You have to be thrown into the fire to recognize, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't for me. That being said, I continued to put 4 years into that environment after this. But just as a funny little story, the American Ninja, a guy named Michael Dudikoff, again, that's an 80s movie reference. He was one of the co-stars of this film that we're working on. The other was Marlee Matlin, and Marlee is the famous Oscar-winning actress. She's deaf. You might remember her as Jerry Seinfeld's deaf girlfriend in one of or a few of his episodes. Anyway, she was awesome. And in fact, Michael Dudikoff was awesome too. Great. But just to give you an example, I'm smiling because it's a hilarious story. So big American Ninja fans, because as a kid in the 80s, it was all about ninjas, watching all those kung fu movies and stuff. And the American Ninja was a legend. So for me and my friend Tibby to work on an American Ninja film, which it wasn't, but working on a film with the American Ninja, it was such a highlight as our first thing. A little bit starstruck. So because we had multiple cameras going on in the set, as I mentioned before, because the timeline was so quick, Tibby and I both had to hold clappers, which I've got one in here somewhere. Anyway, the slate that we usually use, because every camera needed their own slate, So we had a number of different people slating to make sure everything got into sync. So the scene was this intimate scene inside a room, and we did the slate in front of Marlee Matlin, and then we ran outside the room and crouched down outside the door in the hallway. And that's the same hallway where the American Ninja, Michael Dudikoff, would come running in the scene after the director said action, and he'd come in, and this really intense scene would happen. So I really get it. It was one of those scenes where it was a tense scene. So the actors, I'm sure, were feeling the pressure as well. As the American Ninja runs into the room, he trips over Tidby's foot, because we're crouched over with our little slates. We're these little volunteer camera assistants. American Ninja trips over Tidby. He stands up, takes his foot back, and whacks him with his foot, kicks him right in the gut. So it's like, as in like, what the hell are you doing, tripping me in the middle of my scene, And it wasn't Tidby's fault. It was cramped quarters. And Tibby was just shocked. I was shocked too. I'm glad I didn't get a kick in the gut by the American Ninja. But I got to tell you, to this day, it's a badge of honor for Tibby to have been kicked in the gut by the American Ninja. I'm telling that story because there was no recourse to that back in those days. It was more of people laughing at the situation. And I remember noting that. I was like, it's funny. Like, he didn't hurt Tibby or anything, but it's not good behavior, and there was no recourse for that. And I remember noting that. And the other thing is, everybody laughed at Tibby for getting kicked in the gut. And like, this is a bit of an example of the culture of the film sets I was working on. And there was amazing, beautiful, supportive people on those sets too, who really saw what was going on and really lifted us up. So I don't want to paint everybody with this picture, but suffice it to say, there was a cultural norm on Hollywood feature film sets that was not kind, was not respectful. And I'm sure some people would happily disagree with me on that. And I know things have changed over the years, but at that particular era, this is what we were going through. So fast forward a number of different feature films and series. We actually did this really crazy science fiction series for 6 months called Star Hunter. And we were in this, the whole thing was in a set of a spaceship. And I remember I lived in my motorhome, for goodness sakes. Everybody else traveled to hotels and stuff, but I was so low on the totem pole and got paid so little that I couldn't afford hotels. So I literally lived in my little motorhome. It was the winter, froze my ass off. But these are the stories that I love to tell today. So it was absolutely worth it. But time and time again, I would find myself in these positions where I felt demeaned and I felt my creativity was being stripped away from me. And I was like, I did not get into becoming a filmmaker to feel this way. I felt like it was time to quit. And when that happened, I also felt that I was failing. I was like, I failed myself. I failed my future. I failed everybody who supported me in going to film school. I failed my mentors in the film industry. I failed all the people that helped push me through, encourage me through some of those hard times. I felt like a fail. And that, just like being bullied, it's something I didn't know that feeling very well growing up. Really do feel like I had a really blessed upbringing, very minimal trauma, which I fully recognize that I'm privileged for. But feeling the experience of being bullied for the first time as an adult and feeling a true sense of failure for the first time as an adult, it's trippy, you know? So I was really going through a soul-searching time. And part of that, like I'm a big music fan, part of me reconnecting with me is when things get stressful, music was my escape. And I used to go see so much live music. And, you know, really, you're going to learn a little bit more in future episodes of this, how critical music was and filming music in the creation of this company, Hemmings House. But I remember a couple of buddies of mine going down to St. Andrews, which is about, let's say, an hour and a half away from where I live right now, and I was really down. And we went down to see a band called Hot Toddy, good friends, and they're amazing, a lot of fun. And I remember, you know, all those stresses just going away because I was like, I'm in this great environment with beautiful people, everybody's dancing, great band, and this slightly older lady, beautiful woman, long gray hair, probably in her late 50s maybe, came up to me, and I didn't know who she was, but she had a flask in her pocket, and she pulled it out. She said, "Hey man, do you want to have a drink of Jaeger?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I do." So we went out back and we took a couple little shots of Jägermeister, and I was like, you know what, this is what I needed. I just needed one of those nights to escape. As I got to know her, it's funny because I was never a smoker, but you know how if you smoke cigarettes, you go outside and you get to know people, and that's kind of like the communal place to talk. Well, for me and this lady, we kept on going out back. Instead of having a smoke, we'd have a little shot of our Jägermeister. Anyway, I got to know her pretty well, and she told me that her old man, which is another word for boyfriend, is a Dutch captain that's lived on his sailboat for 30 plus years in the Caribbean, and it's a sailboat that actually is a cargo sailboat. He actually sails cargo all over the Caribbean and around the world, in fact, all by the power of the wind. And I was like, what? That's amazing. And I said, you know what? I am a sailor as well. I haven't sailed in quite a few years, but I was debating buying a sailboat a few years ago, as I mentioned in episode 1. And I said, you know, I would love to do that. Now, don't forget, I had a few Jaegers in me, okay? And I said, you know, I would love to go do that sometime. And Charlene is the woman's name. She said, well, you know what? Paul needs crew right now because one of his longtime crew just had to leave. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. I totally forgot about this conversation, by the way. Completely forgot about this conversation. And in next episode, I'm going to explain to you how this conversation came back to me, not so much longer, and I found myself on an airplane going somewhere where I had no idea what I was about to do. Was I going to be running drugs? Was I going to be running weapons? I had no idea. But because I was in this position of I got to find myself and I was ready for a new adventure, I said yes. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about this. And don't forget, at the bottom go through the written materials here. We're going to review a lot of what I just discussed about finding yourselves in very uncomfortable situations as you grow into the film industry, going in with a thick skin, fully aware that you may be disappointed, but also encouraging you that disappointment and failure is actually foundations for success for you. And we're going to be going through that. And before you get to episode 3, there's going to be a few exercises I'm going to get you to go through. So really happy to be able to share these stories with you. And again, remember, your founding story is critical. And give it 10 years, your founding story is going to inspire so many other people. And in fact, I'm anticipating that is going to happen, because when I talk to entrepreneurs all over the world, it's always their founding stories that are the ones that inspire others to let them know that they can do it too. So until next week, thanks for sticking around. Have a loving day.